Welcome to the show, everyone. On today's episode, I'm excited to have my friend Trevor Higgins with us today. He is the founder of Metrolina Mortgage and works with Glenhouse Strategies as a VC consultant. Trevor, welcome to the show.
Oh, thank you so much for having me.
Hey, it's great to have you. And, this is a crazy time right now with mortgages. And I, definitely want to shift the conversation that side in a bit. But before that, could you talk about your background? What do you do? And just how do you get into mortgages?
Yeah, great question. It's actually, I'll try to abbreviate the story a little bit, but long story short, what brought me to Charlotte, I was in the fitness industry. I was here for about 4 or 5 months, and the company I worked for actually started going bankrupt, and I could see the writing on the walls. I'm like, okay, this is not going to be good. So at that time, I was in my mid-20s, didn't have any lending experience, could barely spell mortgage, had no idea what was involved in the process, had never even bought a house. But a buddy of mine that I used to work with back in Ohio, which is where I'm from, he was doing very, very well in mortgages. So he's like, dude, just go find a mortgage job. I'm like, okay, well, I don't even know the first thing about mortgages. So I went to the bookstore, grabbed Mortgages for Dummies, went up to Wells Fargo and said, hey, I've got a lot of sales management experience. Will you guys hire me? And they did. Thank the Lord they had a pretty great training program at the time. So ended up learning the process, getting into the retail side of mortgages, and the rest is history. Now we're here.
Oh, that's amazing. Okay, so you were in the fitness industry. The company was going bankrupt, so you're looking for a career change. So you got into mortgages because one of your friends told you it's lucrative.
Yeah.
And coincidentally, this company also had a great training program.
Yeah.
Okay, so is that the same company you're still with today, or?
No. So that was Wells Fargo. We all know what happened, about 6 years ago with Wells Fargo. So I was with them going from my second year into my third year, and the whole Wells Fargo scandal came out. And so, when your referral partners start saying, hey, by the way, Trevor, I tried to refer you, but they won't call you because they're afraid they're going to get a fake credit card or checking account because they're using Wells Fargo, I knew it was time for a change. So that's when I made the switch over to Fairway Mortgage, which is where I'm at now.
Okay, great. So going into that, Fairway Mortgage, tell us about how the last few years have been with interest rates super low and what's currently happening right now in the market.
Yeah, so it's been great. I mean, for the last 3 years, pretty consistently, mortgage companies have made record profits, just because you're dealing with both purchase business, but we've been able to eat off refi business as well. So it's been fantastic. Specifically the last 2 years, it's been excellent. I mean, the rates went down into the twos out of nowhere. It sparked up a bunch of refinances, so things were great. And then, all of a sudden this year, rates jumped from, mid threes to the mid fives in a matter of 60 days. It puts a little halt on those refinances.
Yeah, absolutely. So have you seen business slow down, or how does this impact your business?
Yeah, great question. So our business, our team's business is probably about 85% purchase. So while volume is down about 30% industry wide, our volume's only down about 15. The biggest hit is profitability. So when interest rates rise that quickly, you lose quite a bit on the back end as far as profitability. So we've taken that hit, which compressed margins. It's the cyclical nature of the mortgage business. There's really nothing we can do about that. But luckily, the volume piece has not really decreased a lot for us. Not like the loan officers that have really put their stake in refinance business.
So now with rates increasing, a lot of volumes going down, what can people in your industry do to kind of combat that or kind of survive long enough for volume to pick up?
Yeah, great question. So, I would probably say that the two biggest things you can do, first one is be a true mortgage advisor. Okay. And what I mean by that is there's still a lot of opportunity out there for refinances for the right people. For example, let's say you have a client that has some high interest rate credit card debt, maybe a high interest rate student loan or auto loan. So we can utilize debt manipulation, move that over to a lower interest rate, a lower payment, improve their cash flow on a monthly basis, and then show them how they can utilize that cash flow. If we're working with their financial advisor, we'll show them how to utilize that cash flow into some type of investment vehicle, or put it back into the principal of the loan and saving them interest over time. So being an advisor would be my number one piece of advice for any loan officer out there that's struggling with business. And then outside of that is just market share, right? Just capturing more referral partners in a business in the market that we're in right now is a key piece to survival. We all know rates are going to drop eventually, most likely probably in the next 14 to 18 months. So when that happens, refinances come back, everything comes back. The more market share you can own at that point in time, the more successful your business is going to be.
Got it. I love the fact that you said being an advisor. I think that applies to most businesses, especially businesses like yours, where it's very referral based, very relationship driven, right? You want to do business with people you like and trust. And I absolutely love that fact. And so for people who are just getting started in mortgages, what do you think they can do to, I guess, improve their chance of success? You said being an advisor, but let's say you don't really know anyone. How can you build that relationships?
Yeah, so the way, we've got a couple of loan officers that have started from ground zero on our team. And the way that I always put it out towards them is diversifying your portfolio of referrals, right? So you don't want to stake your business in just real estate agents, just financial advisors, just a builder account. You want to make sure you're well diversified, through your sphere, through networking and meeting other professionals, going direct to consumers. There's a lot of different methods based on your personality type, what you like to do, and just getting out there, right? It's massive amounts of action, getting your name out there and getting people to know what you do.
I love that. Great. Well, let's shift the conversation a little bit to Glenhouse Strategies. What is Glenhouse Strategies? I know you and I grabbed coffee a few weeks back or a few months back now, and you talked about it, and I thought that was the most interesting thing ever. So let's share with the audience.
Yeah. So originally, Greg Pizarro, the founder of the company, started off as a political consulting company, which is how I got involved, wanting to get more involved in politics. So we were primarily doing a lot of political consulting in several different industries and sectors, but that kind of grew from political consulting to more business consulting. A lot of it focused in the cannabis space. From those connections, it started to just spiderweb into more of, we've got connected to a few startups, helped facilitate a couple of fundraising rounds for those startups. And now it's kind of turning into a consulting company with a primary focus in private equity and venture capital.
Okay, so let's talk a little bit more about this cannabis space. So did you want to make political reform related to the cannabis space, or how does politics and cannabis go hand in hand, or are they completely unrelated?
Yeah, so yes, absolutely. I think personally, regardless of political view, because it doesn't really matter. There's a lot of medicinal benefits to it, but there's also a lot of state and local benefits from a government perspective to legalized marijuana and cannabis. So it was a big focus of ours, just especially because it's already legal in what I think 20 some states. I don't know off the top of my head, but it's legal in a lot of states, medicinally in even more states. So it's a huge topic, and I think it's something that can benefit everyone. My background is starting in pharmacology, which is actually what's my degree's in. Yeah, how I ended up in the fitness industry and mortgages, no one will ever know. But so I was able to kind of use that background, as far as pharmacology and toxicology goes, diving into more of the medicinal benefits of cannabis and what it can do to help.
So you actually have a drink that's focused on this. Talk about that. Let's hear about it.
Yeah. So Delta Beverages. So we've got it's a Delta 8 seltzer, and we also have an HHC seltzer. So if you're not familiar with cannabis or cannabis derivatives, I'm sure most people have heard of CBD. Delta 8 is just another cannabis derivative. It is a THC-based cannabis derivative, but legal in almost all of the 50 states. Just like anything, federally, it is protected. However, a state can make a decision that they want that in their state or they don't. So there are a few states that do not allow Delta 8 or certain cannabis derivatives in their state. But yeah, it's been a great hit. I mean, our founder, Jack, did a fantastic job with starting up a CBD company and a lab here in Charlotte. And then came up with this idea, with the booming of Trulies and, these different seltzer type drinks in the market. There was nothing cannabis based. So that's where he got the idea. And it's been, rapidly growing ever since.
That's amazing. Is this North Carolina local, or can people buy it outside of North Carolina?
Yeah, great question. So we're in, almost all of the East Coast. We're in about 700 retail locations right now. Mainly, we're starting to get in more convenience stores, but primarily your vape shops or smoke shops, things of that nature. We're in Yes Way gas stations, which was a big deal. We just closed 2 months ago. So it's starting to expand. But yeah, I mean, you can find it in Chicago. You can find it at the beach. You can find it almost, I think we're in about 18 states, but you can also order direct from our website, deltabeverages.com.
Okay, so is this still related to Glen House, or is this a completely different business and we just completely jumped off the Glen House train?
Yeah. So it is related in a way. Great question. So Jack, the founder of Delta Beverages, has been a good friend of mine for a while. So Glen House, I brought Glen House in later. I've known Jack longer than I've been involved with Glen House, but ended up bringing Glen House in on a fundraising round for Delta, just to be able to expand, buy more inventory and different things of that nature. So that's how Glen House got involved with Delta Beverages. So they are tied together now.
You basically go raise capital for these startups and you take partial equity in these startups. Is that how it works?
Yeah, so that was the original idea, and what we've been doing. We're actually starting to migrate more to a private equity model is what we're working on right now. But yeah, that's what we've done in the past. We do a lot of work with athletes. It was just some of the connections that we made through the advocacy and different consulting that we were doing. So a lot of our value add is with the network of athletes that we have and promotions. It's not just athletes, celebrities as a whole, being able to promote brands. So, a lot of brands will come to us for that fundraising, and it's got to fit our model, right? It's something that's got to fit. You got to be passionate about it. Make sure, your group, as far as our clientele with athletes and celebrities, are going to get behind it as well. But yeah, it's been awesome. It's just like Delta Beverages, just taken off out of nowhere.
Okay, so you work with athletes. Is that what most of your products focus on, or just coincidentally that's what you've been doing? Was that your intention from the beginning?
No, not at all. That was it transpired out of a lot of some consulting that we were doing. Against primarily in the cannabis space. We got connected to quite a few different athletes, pro athletes, and you get connected to one, and next thing you know, there's 2, 3, and it just kind of grew from there. So we grew this athlete and celebrity base, of which we have them. Some of them are involved in a larger capacity. Some of them are more or less just brand ambassador type roles, depending on what they want their level of involvement to be. But yeah, it was just connections.
I guess, what type of products do these athletes use exactly? Like, are they using Delta 8 beverages or?
Touchy subject. So, for example, the NFL has still not allowed Delta 8 into the NFL at all. So they can't promote it. Obviously, if they're retired, they can, but they can't promote it if they're actively playing right now. MLB and NBA have allowed it, so they can actively promote any type of cannabis derivatives. So it just depends on the player and what they're playing, but a lot of it is coming to different events. For example, with Delta Beverages would be the best example. We sponsor an IndyCar, and so we'll bring the last race we brought Ezekiel Elliott with us. Obviously, anywhere you bring Zeke to is going to bring promotional people. It's going to bring a crowd. It's going to bring the news. So it just helps promote it from that standpoint.
Okay, so let's talk about more of this promotion stuff. I find it interesting. I mean, there's the legal side of it, and then there's the social acceptance. How does promoting something that's tailored towards, I guess, people who enjoy using it, but I guess with athletes not actually being able to promote it, how does this all kind of work together?
Yeah, so if the athlete that we work with is in an organization that allows it, obviously they can promote it on social media. They can do anything they want. If they're in the NFL, they can't. They can still come to events. It's the event will be through Glenhouse, not directly for Delta Beverages. So they can still come through the events. They're there. Obviously going to be seen with us. So that helps in that sense. But yeah, from a direct marketing to consumer aspect, there's nothing really they can do if they're in an organization that won't allow that.
Okay, so what are some other products that you think that these athletes benefit from that you work
Yeah,
with?
so we do. Most of them aren't products. We've got a multitude of different brands. So we've got a new social media app that'll be coming out here in the next 30 to 45 days called Parakeet. It's a way to connect with people, both from either a network building or a dating aspect. You can use it for either. So it's versatile in that sense. We are working with a local app that's a prop betting app. So, you can bet on Tiger Woods to win the Masters, things like that. We're working with them. We've got a South American airline project that we're working on, and a couple other smaller ones in the cannabis space that are just off to the side, but due to legislation. But so it's a multitude of different projects that we work on, that we're currently working on. And it's just utilizing, more or less brand ambassadors or athletes and celebrities with a large following, being able to utilize that. They're going to benefit from it based on how we structure the deal. We make sure they're going to benefit from it. We obviously benefit from their following. So it's a win-win situation for everybody.
That's incredible. I want to change this conversation a little bit. And you have a car. It's a beautiful car. It's green McLaren.
I had to bring it up.
I had to. So I remember you telling me about how you got into it and the previous cars that you've owned. But just if you could share with the audience how you drive these exotic cars and the financial situation of doing it.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's something that a buddy of mine helped me get into, and it's fun. Obviously, you get to drive a McLaren or Aston Martin, Lamborghini, whatever it might be, and you don't have to do it on that level. Obviously, it's you can Google it. There's different versions of what the internet will call car hacking. There's different methods, and people do it different ways. But basically, it's where you buy a vehicle. Obviously, you have to buy it and then list it for sale. It's finding the right vehicle with enough margin to be able to play with. So you buy a vehicle, as soon as you buy it, you list it for sale. And then, you might have it for 2 weeks, 2 months, 3 months, depending on when it sells. You can make a profit. Sometimes you just break even, but knock on wood, I have not lost money on this car hacking idea yet. So it's been fun.
Okay.
It's a little addicting.
Yeah, no, I bet. I mean, getting all these beautiful cars, and you're saying you don't lose money. In fact, you're getting paid to drive all these incredible cars.
Yeah.
Could you walk us through the details of how you get started?
Yeah, I mean, obviously the easiest thing to do would be having a connection through a car dealer. I mean, because they're going to have much more broader reach than you would on Facebook Marketplace. But you can do it on Facebook Marketplace. There are people out there that do that. So it starts with either having a partnership or figuring out where you're going to market and sell your vehicle. Then it's all about understanding the car market. So just like the housing market, as COVID caused a lot of chip production to slow down, the prices of vehicles increased because new vehicles became scarce. Even used vehicles were hard to find. So that drove the prices up on vehicles. So it just starts with finding a vehicle with the right margin. I personally utilize Car Gurus just to gauge what the market is currently paying.
Is that a website?
Yeah, Car Gurus is a website, and they're market indicator. So they'll tell you, hey, this price is high, low, fair, whatever it might be. Their market indicators, for the most part, depending on what car it is, for the most part, are pretty accurate. So you can figure out, hey, here's an idea of where the market's selling right now for this specific vehicle with these options and miles, and then say, okay, here's what I'm going to list it for, whether that's through, again, Facebook Marketplace or utilizing and making a deal with a local dealership.
Okay, so let's say you find this car. Then what happens? Do you try to lowball the seller, or how do you go ahead with this transaction?
Yeah, you can, absolutely. I mean, depends on their desperation, I guess. Yeah, so once you buy it, as long as you have mediocre credit and provable income, depending on what kind of car and what level you're buying at. I mean, think $50,000 and below does not require any type of income verification with most banks. Above $50,000, it does. So it just depends on the level of car. Most of the time, when you can get a car under market that would work for this car hacking model, you can finance it at 100%. So you don't have to put, I mean, obviously you can, but you don't have to put any money into the deal. Then, obviously you're listing that car for sale pretty much the day that you get it. And you might have to detail it, get it ready, but you're going to list it for sale. And, again, I've had cars that have taken 2 weeks to sell. I've had cars that take 2 months to sell. It just really depends on the vehicle and what it is. But yeah, you might make a payment or two, but typically, as long as you plan, just like real estate or any type of investing, as long as you plan for, sales tax, property tax in your state, maybe some carrying costs of making a payment or two, oil change, as long as you're focusing on the numbers and making sure it's going to work within those margins, you should be fine. I wouldn't recommend, going out and buying a car from a dealership and then trying this, because chances are they're trying to get kind of close to the top of the market already.
Okay, so you have to find third-party buyers and then make sure the numbers work, and then you list it immediately and you just drive it until the car sells.
Just drive it until it sells. In fact, I've never had anyone ask for a test drive, which is crazy. You would think people would want to test drive a car before they buy it, but no. In fact, most of the buyers are not local either. They're out-of-state buyers. Mm-hmm.
So these buyers, do they pay for transportation costs, or how does all that work?
Typically. I mean, obviously everything's negotiation, so it depends on where they're at. I mean, if they're negotiating and haggling you down a little bit, then if you have room, great. If not, just depends on those negotiations and how you run them. But very big importance on knowing your margins. How about that?
So what kind of margins are you recommending that people make sure they have before they get started?
Yeah, it just depends on your objective. So my objective wasn't to actually make money. It was just not to lose money and be able to drive a car that I wouldn't normally spend the money on to buy. Aston Martin, Lamborghini, McLaren. I'm not going to go out and buy one of those in a normal situation, but in this situation, I would. So for me, it wasn't necessarily about making money. It was just making sure, hey, any costs that I'm incurring for buying this vehicle, whether it's maintenance, payments, taxes, as long as I can cover all of those things and break even, I'm happy. So for me, that was the objective, just to be able to drive some cool cars and have some fun with it. Figure out how to get a McLaren as a hobby, right?
I love that. Okay, I guess when I'm ready to, I know who I'm going to reach out to
there you
learn
go.
how to do
Perfect.
this.
Absolutely.
So shifting a conversation a little bit, we're talking about entrepreneurship. I mean, you're an entrepreneur. You have a bunch of businesses. You're an advisor. You have equity in a bunch of companies. At what age did you realize entrepreneurship was your path?
Great question. I can tell you the exact moment, actually, that I decided that I wanted to be an entrepreneur. So it was my freshman year in college, and our fraternity had a leadership academy in a terrible, terrible place called Cabo San Lucas, Mexico. Awful place to over spring break.
Yeah. Oh my gosh.
Over spring break. I mean, oh man, they had to pull my leg to go. No, so it was actually a life changing experience for me, because you went down. Obviously, we got to go to the beach and drink at night, but Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, and Friday, most of the day were alumni, successful entrepreneurs, multimillionaires, billionaires, celebrities, politicians, whoever they might be, coming in to give you some, seminar or motivational speech, whatever it was. And it was absolutely life-changing. So I was sitting in the hot tub at Jerry Noble. So Jerry Noble he bought the resort that we did it at. He started Ticketmaster, a small company. Not sure if you've ever heard of it. So he had a couple bucks, and he bought a resort down there for this leadership academy. And so we're over at his house, which is 2 lots down from the resort, and sitting in the hot tub with a guy named Scott Noble. So he owns a company, Noble Royalties, which owns a large percentage of oil wells in Texas. Worth over $1 billion. Flew in on his private jet, and I had never met anyone on that type of level before. And I'm sitting in a hot tub, and to be honest, at the time, I really didn't understand the impact and or how significant the guy sitting next to me, drinking a glass of wine and smoking a cigar with me was. But I was like, hey, just having a conversation with him, and said, hey, if you could give me one piece of advice, what would it be? And it was a very long story, so I'll shorten it. Basically, he said, number 1, be your own boss. Number 2, life's all about who you know. And so it took a couple of years for those ideas. In fact, I ended up going back again my junior year. So it took a couple of years for those ideas. And the second time I went back, they started to really sink in. And that's when I really knew that I wanted to be my own boss in some retrospect. I had no idea what I was going to do, but I knew I wanted to do that in some way.
So you got this experience as a freshman.
Yeah. Crazy, right? That's one way to do your first spring break in college.
Yeah, I'm sure that was a life-changing spring break, which most people won't be able to say they had.
Yeah, most people just spend money.
Yeah,
exactly. Which I did. But it was great.
And so you met him, and then were you able to keep in touch with him? Is he your mentor now, or was that a one-time thing?
We probably haven't talked in about 6 years or so, just through everybody kind of going our own ways. But we stayed in contact for a while. There's a couple other guys that I stayed in contact with that were just, again, just dynamite. Absolutely, not only had the personalities and the business, the success that I wanted, but they also had the character that I wanted to develop as an entrepreneur. And so, it was awesome being able to have these, guys worth $500 million, $1 billion, and they're actually talking to a 21-year-old kid, or 20. I think I was 19 or 20 the first time I went. 19, when I went, because I was a freshman. And the second time I went, I was 21. But crazy. I mean, where in life can you meet those type of connections? So it was 100% life-changing experience.
That's incredible. So when you're around these centimillionaires and billionaires, what were the personalities or characters that you saw kind of as a commonality between all of them?
Yeah, so they're very calculated. They're very calculated in what they say, how they say it. But for the most part, they were very real people, which is what I love the most. I mean, if you were out right now, let's say we went out for a drink and these guys were sitting down, you wouldn't be able to tell, that they were a billionaire or worth $500 million. They just look like regular people, and I like that. They maintained their character. They maintained their personality and who they were to an extent before. And you can tell that even though, now they're doing well.
Comfortable, as they like to say.
Yeah, comfortable. Yeah, very comfortable.
So you're saying they're real kind of regular people. They're not flashy in any way. And so I guess, how are you able to spot these billionaires? Is it the way that they speak, or how did you know that they were who they were?
Yeah, great question. So they told us.
Oh, they just straight up said, worth $1 billion. Listen to me.
Right, yeah. They would, so they had kind of like a pamphlet that had all the speakers, what they do, what their company is, company's revenue, and some basic statistics like that. So we already knew that information. I would say now, having been, in the networking space and getting to know people, typically, I don't know, I won't say you can tell by meeting a person. Sometimes you can, if you're around them enough. You can kind of spot out these just interesting characteristics. Like I said, the calculated talking, the approach. Typically, you'd be surprised in what they wear is not what you think. They're not in perfectly tailored suits all the time and flashy clothes. But through my networking experience, I would say that, identifying these opportunities is just creating conversations and talking to people. You never really know who you're talking to. You never really know what they do or who you're meeting. So just talking with everyone. And, that's what Google's for after you get home.
I love that. Okay. You've, again, started a bunch of businesses. What is a piece of advice that you'd give for someone who is just starting their business? Or what is something you would make sure that they don't do when they start? Like something that you would do again?
So hashtag fix your focus. So what I mean by that is focus. What you focus on is extremely important, especially in the beginning. And I think, at least from what I've seen, a lot of the mistakes in startups in early entrepreneurship is entrepreneurs want, especially millennials, want everything to be perfect before they start, right? I got to have the perfect website and all my social media set up and be number one on Google. And I've got to have this phone number and that phone number and this email address. And they have all this laundry list of things that they need, that they think they need. And then they spend a year putting those things together, countless dollars putting those things together, but they don't get started. They spend so much time getting ready that they could have just, you can get started without having all of those things and kind of do it as you go. So I would say a lot of people get held back by worrying about all the little details that can come over time. If you're not in a position to where maybe you have a venture capitalist or you have some type of funding, you're self-funded. If you have the capital to be able to hire people to do those things, great. Most people don't when they're starting a business. So just worry about, hey, what's my objective? Do I have a product? Do I have a service? What am I selling? And what are the absolute necessities that I need to do to start moving this product or service, and do that and then figure out the rest as you go? Because on it, most of the time, it's going to change anyways.
Yeah, no, absolutely. You got to keep adapting, kind of do the minimum viable product, keep moving forward. The 80-20 principle, right? All of it's coming together, right? So do you think having a partner is essential for a business or an entrepreneur's success?
I don't think it's essential. I think a mentor and support is 100% essential, especially if you can find a mentor in the space that you're going into. Somebody that's been down that road before, that's priceless. Just period. It's priceless. Is a partner always needed? No, I don't think so. I think there also can be a lot of mistakes with partners, because if you don't have the right partner, or you guys can't synchronize thoughts, actions, and ideas of what you want to do, it's going to be hard to push forward. So it can be a great thing, but identifying the right person that you can sync with is absolutely essential. And if you can't do that, or you don't know how to do that, then I wouldn't bring on a partner. I would just do it from a sole proprietor standpoint.
I love that. So partnerships are basically like a marriage, right? You don't want to go into it just casually dating around.
It's not a speed dating.
I love that piece of advice that you gave. Now, what is something that you would 100% do again if you were to start a new business?
Yeah, I think so what I was just sharing about in the hot tub, life is all about who you know. Life is all about being in the right place at the right time with the right people. That's how success is created. So the one thing that I didn't know was going to be a pivotal piece to creating, both my mortgage business and Glenhouse, and the success that we've seen so far is networking and building an extensive network. So number one, I never delete a phone number. I'll save everybody's phone number because you never know, right? I can't say I never burn a bridge. I don't purposely try to. I don't think most of us don't, but try to maintain contact with people. But building that network was the best decision. So when I came to Charlotte, even though I was in the fitness industry, I could start to see the writing on the wall from the company that we were working for going under. I didn't know what I was going to do yet, so I just started talking to everybody, meeting people, finding out what they do, just learning more about soaking in as much as I could. Obviously, most of them were members at the gym that I was running at the time. But yeah, just meeting people. And then I found out about networking events and got involved with, Robert at the Charlotte Business Group and started to learn a lot more about that process. Lo and behold, I would get into the mortgage industry, and that's what would drive my business completely. But yeah, I would say just networking is absolutely essential, because you never know when somebody that you met and you remember, you never know when, hey, I might be able to help that person out. Something comes back up later and I can either refer business to that person, I could help their business. And, I'm a firm believer in the concept that the more you are intentional about helping other people, the more people will intentionally try to help you.
I love that. Networking is extremely important. Could you give some do's and don'ts when you go to networking events? I see a lot of people doing it incorrectly, from my opinion, and some people just absolutely crushing it in the networking game. So what are some do's and don'ts for people listening?
Yeah. So vulture, right? So I hate the vulture. The people that are focused in one industry or for one person, and they find that target and that's just where they're at the whole time. Let people breathe a little bit. I am a very just, hey, hi, here's what I do. Here's what you do. Have a quick conversation and move on. I think sometimes we can get caught up in talking with one person so long. Now we're not networking. We're just meeting one person. Well, grab a coffee later and catch up, do that relationship building outside of the networking event. So yeah, doing the vulture, just staying around one person the whole time, I think is one of my biggest pet peeves, especially when it's me and they're just continue to talk to you. I'm sure you've been in that situation before.
Oh yeah.
Oh, it's terrible. So that's a key. Not being prepared. I'm blown away at how many times I go to networking events and, people may not dress professionally. More importantly, not have business cards or some type of, whether it's electronic, you have a QR code, you just scan, whatever your method is, making sure you have that available so you can share your contact information and get it out to people. I'm blown away at how many times I've met somebody at a networking event. They don't have business cards. They don't have like a electronic business card or anything like that set up. I'm like, well, what are you doing here? How are you going to meet people?
It's about preparing. Yeah.
Yeah.
I got a few more questions for you. Could you talk about some of the habits that you've developed that contributed to your success? I mean, it's not easy running a million businesses like you are right now. So I'm sure you have certain habits to give you structure in the day.
Yeah. Throw toddlers in the mix and everything gets crazy.
Oh my gosh.
So habits, I think priorities, understanding your priorities, what's the most important thing to you, and even from a daily task standpoint. So I'm old school. I write everything down. I've got, an old school agenda, calendar. I've got my daily tasks written down, what I need to do this week, what I need to do this month. And so I have that. Number one, I like to cross things off. Number two, I just can't remember it if I don't write it down. So I'm old school in that fact. So usually in the morning, I've already kind of have my day planned. I know what I need to do. I know what my most important objectives to make sure I get done are. And then there's some things that, hey, if I have time, I can fit these in as well. So prioritizing is a huge piece of it, whether you're, no matter what industry you're in. A lot of times we can get sidetracked very easily by different tasks that are not going to, number one, we could do at 10 o'clock at night, right? Maybe it's just an administrative task. Maybe it's just reporting, something of that nature, that you don't have to do that during the day. You can do that at nighttime, focus on your customer facing or the activities that need to be done during the day that you can't do at 10, 11 o'clock at night. So prioritization of tasks, but also self-evaluation. That's been something that I've only been doing for about 3-4 years. But it's drastically improved what I'm doing and my intentionality in what I do. And again, it's very simple. It's just beginning of the year. I've got my goals for that year, both personal, professional. I've got stretch goals. I've got an idea of what I need to do. I break that down, from a monthly perspective, then to a weekly perspective. And then I'll reflect on the past year. Hey, what were my big wins? What were my opportunities for improvement? And then actually go back and try to improve those opportunities, right? So I think there's so many motivational sales, self-help, and development books out there that talk about the importance of writing your goals down and writing these things down. It wasn't something I actually did. I would think them, and I might write something down occasionally, but I never really kept track of it until about 3 or 4 years ago. And it's really the reflection, both from a monthly, quarterly, and annual standpoint, has been something awesome for me to reflect back and, again, identify those opportunities for improvement. Even sometimes they're not like, oh, those are huge mistakes, that's a game changer, like that was terrible. They're not all that. Sometimes it's just, hey, I need to learn a little bit more about that because I got caught off guard in that conversation or that deal or whatever it might be. I need to learn more about that so I can be more educated in that space. Could be something as simple as that.
So writing down goals seems to be the game changer.
Yeah. Write it down and reflect. Write it down and reflect.
Love it. And improve and execute on what you. So you mentioned some of these books. What is your favorite book and what's it about?
Whew, that's tough. I've got quite a few. So one of my, from a leadership and management standpoint, one of my favorite books is Extreme Ownership by Jocko Willing. Awesome book. If you haven't read it, it's basically just about leading up and down the chain of command, if you will. And Jocko was a Navy SEAL. And so it just talks about how your successes and failures in life are 100% your responsibility. If you're let's say you have employees, if your employee doesn't execute something properly, that's not their fault. That's your fault because you either didn't set the right expectations, give them the right development. You missed something that they weren't able to get that job done or execute on what the task was. So that's a really, really great book from a leadership standpoint. Let's see, some of my Can't Hurt Me is a great one from a mental self-help development standpoint, just from Mr. Goggins that really just focuses on how far you can push your mind and what you can actually accomplish if you try. Another really, I've probably read that book 5 or 6 times.
5 or 6 times. Okay. Must be really good.
It's good. Yeah, no, it's really good. And it's not to do with business in any way, shape, or form. It's literally just about David Goggins, who was in the military. He was in the Air Force, got out, was overweight, decided he was going to be a Navy SEAL. And he's the only person that went through Navy SEAL Hell Week 3 times. So the first 2 times he wasn't allowed to continue due to medical reasons. The 3rd time they finally let him finish. And he was a Navy SEAL, ultra marathon runner. I mean, the guy literally went out and ran 100 miles without any training. Not proper nutrition, not the proper shoes, nothing. Went out and ran this 100-mile race. So crazy. It's really just about mental ability development and, what you can do when you put your focus to it. So that was a really cool, eye-opening book. A lot of the books, I will say, they all have similar premise, right? Self-development, whether it's sales, leadership, management, a lot of them have very similar premises. It's just finding that book that spells it out in a way that you can digest and make sense to you. I personally love Audible. All right. That's my favorite thing in the world because where's the one place that you really can't do much outside of drive, right? When you're driving, you don't really have a lot of options. It's not like you can work on your laptop, and maybe in a couple of years Tesla will come up with that. But right now you still have to pay attention to what's going on. So no matter if the drive is 10 minutes or 4 hours, I'll always throw a book on. And that's been a great opportunity. Now, obviously the books that I really like, I'll go buy a hardcover and, they're notes and highlighted and, it'll get a little crazy. But it's a great opportunity to experience a lot of books to help develop and hone in whatever it is that you're working on.
I love that. And I got to mirror that. Audible has been absolutely life-changing, and especially during drives, right? Or just doing chores around the house. You're not wasting time, you're learning.
Oh, absolutely.
Thank you so much for sharing that. I got one last question for you.
Yeah.
Where can our audience get in touch with you, Trevor? This has been a great interview.
No, thank you. Again, thank you so much for having me. Absolutely. So from the mortgage side of our business, our website is metrolinafairway.com. You can just Google the Metrolina Mortgage Team. We're licensed. Our team is licensed in 12 states, but our partners locally are licensed in all 50. So if you've got any mortgage needs there. And then on the Glenhouse side, I would just say email me. It's trevor@glenhousestrategies.com. You can also go to glenhousestrategies.com as well and find our contact information. But I'd absolutely love to hear from you and connect with you regardless of what you're looking to do.
Awesome. I'll put all
Thank
this
you
in the
again.
show. Yeah, absolutely. And I'll put all this in the show notes. Everyone that's listening can get in touch with Trevor. Trevor, thank you so much for your time.
Oh, no problem. Thank you, Vijay.